What's going on, everybody? Once again, here on a live. Thanks to those joining me live and those that'll be joining me on the archive. You listen to the archive, hit that like button, share this video on all your social media platforms. I'm being joined by Kelsey Wickstrum. How are you doing, Kelsey?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good myself. Had a long day of work, but now I'm here. Okay,
Same.
it looks like you're about to get your another day of work started. Um, so first things first, I want to go back before we talk about the present. Okay. I did a little bit of research on you. I watched like an interview you did about 2 years ago here on YouTube. And on that interview, you did mention you've been doing sports since you were 4 years old. Um, but I didn't quite catch which, but what type of sports did you play growing up?
I started out in Kempo karate actually,
Okay.
as a very, very young kid and did that for close to 6 or 7 years, until I hit, grade school, junior high when, real sports started happening. And then kind of merged into all the school sports from there, basketball, volleyball, softball, track. I did all of it for years.
Did you do any karate tournaments
I
or
did a
anything like
lot of karate tournaments as a kid, and I was very, very good actually.
that?
And in that Kempo style. I lived in the Bay Area at the time, so when my family moved me up to Northern California, there weren't any karate studios at that time for me to continue, so I kind of just merged into
Okay.
school sports.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up doing karate as well. So as a kid, it's just a thing parents take their kids to. So taught me a lot of discipline and all that. So I
Hmm.
was like doing. I did it for about 10 years. So a lot of team sports after that. It sounds like, right?
Yes, a lot of team sports. There wasn't really anything, I guess, individual until, track. You're obviously kind of individual at that point, but for the
For
most
sure.
part, I was always on a team.
Okay. Now, as far as martial arts, did you grow up like I don't know, like were you a Bruce Lee fan growing up or anything like that, or?
So when I was involved in the karate a lot as a kid, I used to go to the summer camps, and they were all about Bruce Lee. The summer camps, those were the videos we watched, and I mean, so yeah, it was kind of a he was kind of the icon, I guess, back then for any type of karate. So yeah, I've probably seen those movies a million times.
Yeah. Chuck Norris, were you a Chuck Norris fan?
I was a Chuck Norris fan when
Yeah,
I
I
was
was more of a
little.
Chuck Norris guy myself than Chuck
Yeah.
Norris, yeah. So, so he was a karate world champion. He did movies
Hmm.
too, so all that good stuff.
Yep.
I'm not a fan of his movies, but nonetheless,
Right.
so a lot of sports growing up. What about boxing? Did you grow up watching boxing? Like, was that a thing you watched?
Honestly, I didn't.
Okay.
I was so into the sports I was playing at the time. Boxing didn't really come into my life until about 7.5, 8 years ago. So,
Okay. Yeah, that interview was about 2 years ago. Then you said you've been doing it for just 5 years. Well, so as far as how did that happen? How did you just like run into boxing exactly?
I was honestly in a bad place in life, a long time ago, and I had a friend who was doing private lessons in boxing, and she asked me if I wanted to come along with her to one of her lessons as a partner. She said it was a good outlet, and I went to one lesson with her, and I never stopped. I immediately fell in love with it. I fell in love with it was therapy at the time. And then I ended up being extremely good at it as time went on, and it just became a love and a passion, and I kind of just dove headfirst into that world.
It does sound like because I have several friends that are boxers, and it just sounds like such a familiar. I keep hearing that same thing. The outlet, it's
Hmm.
the fact that the sport is so hard, it makes you focus on it, and just all those things. So that's very interesting. Um, when did you realize, okay, I actually want to fight? Like it's one thing to train boxing and use it
Right.
as an outlet, but when did you realize, I kind of want to get in the ring and fight another human being? Like when did you realize that?
So here locally, because I'm in Reading, they do something called a tough man competition, every once in a while at one of the casinos here. So it's basically, exhibition boxing. And you can go in and swing at someone, have a good time.
Okay.
And so after a few months of training, my coach is like, well, do you want to try one? Do you want to see how you actually like contact, And so I signed up, did a tough man, didn't win, but it was the most amazing feeling ever. I mean, I was just like, I got to do that again. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. It was super beginner for me. But there was just something about stepping between those ropes and it just being you and one other person. And knowing that you're all you have. Your coaches are there to give you reminders, but you're on your own. And some part of me thrived in that moment, and I never looked back. I've been going ever since.
Me, when I did karate tournaments, I didn't realize how like those really weren't anywhere near like a fight until I
No.
actually went as a teenager to a boxing gym and just did regular sparring. I like, this shit's hard. Like this is
It is.
totally different, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
explain like even though you were just a kid when you did karate, but what's the difference between like a karate tournament kind of points match to just getting in the ring and fighting somebody in a boxing ring?
So for me as a kid, um, like you had said, it was more of a discipline. It was more about learning to control myself. Um, and it was a points game, and it was very, very controlled by my coaches, by the refs, by everything going on in that moment. I didn't feel like it was like I was determining the outcome, I guess. Um, with boxing, I feel like I'm in full control of the situation. I don't have it's the boundaries are endless. Yes, it's still sanctioned. It's still there to protect you. There's still refs, but the mindset is different. I have the discipline. I have the dedication. I'm not being directed and taught as a young child needing that direction. I'm already there. So now it's me versus me. It's about bettering myself every day that I'm here. um and so as an adult, that's pretty priceless, if you stick with it.
Awesome, awesome. So you did now. I've asked boxers before, and I've been corrected several times because box rec isn't always correct. It showed that you had two amateur fights. Did you have more than that?
I had 15 amateur boxing
Okay.
fights. So, and the records are weird in amateurs
Okay.
because when it comes to like USA boxing, they're counting your boxing record, but I also did amateur MMA. I also did amateur
Okay.
kickboxing. I also did amateur Muay Thai. So when you combine everything together, your record's a lot different. It's
Okay.
just, it gets separated a little bit.
It's okay. Now, of all those, you mentioned MMA, Muay Thai, boxing. Did I miss one?
And kickbox. I
And
did, I
kickboxing.
did a couple kickboxing.
Okay. Which one of those four did you find harder?
I still find boxing the hardest personally because
Okay.
MMA and MMA, even kickboxing and Muay Thai, you have multiple tools to pull from. You know, you have kicks. Muay Thai, you have elbows. You have sweeps. MMA, you have takedowns. You have groundwork. You have all this stuff, and then boxing, you got footwork and you got hands. Uh, it's about it. So to me, boxing is still the hardest. It takes a lot more accuracy and focus, to pull it off.
Now, you did say like to you. So, do you think it's like an individual thing? Whatever someone feels comfortable with. Like
I
maybe
mean,
somebody
I'm
finds.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because like take MMA for instance, I could see people thinking that being is the hardest because you have to learn a ground game.
Right.
That's a huge part of MMA, and that can take years and years and years to perfect. So I can see a lot of people having that opinion. I just think when you have all those extra tools at your disposal, it is easier for you. Like if you're getting whooped on the stand up, you take it to the ground. If you're not good on the ground, you keep it on the feet. You have options. Um, Boxing, you are kind of just stuck with what you got, and if you're getting outworked, then you don't have a fail safe. You got to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do, and you're fighting somebody that's good at that as well, right? So it is what it is.
Absolutely.
Uh, so, right. So it's all about perspective, obviously. Now, one thing I do need to ask you. So since you turned pro, you had a fight in 2021, and
Mhm.
then you fought 2 years later. So just I believe it was April. You fought again. You won by stoppage. Um, so I need to ask, like, what's with the inactivity? Because that's a long time between fights.
Absolutely. As any professional athlete knows, you put your body through a lot when you fight and when you train. And I had a couple injuries come up,
Okay.
getting prepared for another fight after my initial one, in 21, and it just took a little longer to get back in the ring than I had ever anticipated. The injury didn't last a super long time, but I kind of realized the one of the downfalls of boxing at that time was I won that fight in 21. I rose up here because I beat a really high level debuter, and I was supposed to lose that fight, and I didn't. So, I had all these fight offers coming, I had all these things happening, and then I got hurt. The inactivity kind of put me back down at the bottom again. So as soon as I was able to fight, I couldn't find one. I couldn't get
Yeah.
one. And the offers that my coach was getting were absurd. Honestly, they were absurd. There was no way they would have let me take them. So it was just one of those things where I'm going to wait. I'm going to buy my time. I'm going to, just have faith that something's going to come up, and eventually something did. And I was able to fight this year, but it's a rough game. It's a rough game. So,
Okay.
and I've always been on the bottom. I've always been the underdog, the B side. So when you're a low man on the totem pole, getting the fights is hard.
Well, waiting, I guess, was the right choice because the cyborg call
Yeah.
came. How did this fight happen? Did you guys get the call, or did
Yeah,
your team
the
try to
the
get the fight? How did it happen?
promoter No, the promoter reached out with the offer, a short while back, and I pitched it to the coaches, and we kind of assessed where I was, and if they thought it was a good idea, and bottom line, obviously here we are. We ended up taking it. Um, so yeah, I mean, it presented itself to me, which was nice, and I appreciate the opportunity. I'm grateful for it.
Okay. Now, look, Cyborg is obviously well known in the combat sports world. She's an MMA legend, pretty much. She's won a belt
Absolutely.
everywhere she's been. So she has a world of experience. She also she did do her boxing pro debut not that long ago herself. She did
Mhm.
go to a decision. I couldn't find it. Do you know yet, or how many rounds it's going to be?
It's going to be 6 rounds.
6 rounds. Okay.
Hmm.
All right. Do you feel, because usually when fighters are a name like this, their team try to look for good opponents, but opponents they feel are the right opponent for the right time. Do you think you're being overlooked here? Do you think she's picking you because she thinks she's going to get an easy win here?
I do think I'm being overlooked. Um, but there's been no disrespect, from the things that I've seen or heard from other people. They've seen, clips of her interviewing on YouTube or other platforms, and she's been nothing but respectful to me. And so, I don't feel like they're necessarily looking at me as a walkover, but I do always feel like I'm overlooked, obviously. Chris Cyborg is an OG. She's a trailblazer. I have the utmost respect for her, and it's an absolute honor to share the ring with her. Um, but I don't care what anybody says. MMA is not the same as boxing. It's just not. Um, so I would never in a million years accept an MMA fight with her. That would be absurd. That's not my world. But boxing is, and I'm very confident in myself. I'm confident in my team. I wouldn't have taken it if I wasn't. So I do think that this is going to be an amazing fight. But I do hope that that mutual respect is shown when the time comes, because overlooking me would be a mistake.
Now, to what you said, I was going to bring up. She did do an interview on her channel, actually, Chris Cyborg here on YouTube,
Hmm.
and she did say nice things. She said you're tough, and she's looking forward to the challenge. I think
Hmm.
she said all the right, pretty much on the tee, right?
Yeah.
She says she's looking forward to the fight. However, sometimes people do things, they say things without saying them. So 2 minutes after that, she's talking about fighting Clarissa Shields, right, in a
Okay.
boxing ring. So she's already like it
Looking
doesn't mean
past
she's
me.
yeah. Do you think she
Mhm.
might be, even if it's not intentional, just looking past you at this point?
Absolutely. And like I said, verbally, there's no disrespect, but I do definitely think that I am just, once again, I'm not expected to win. But honestly, I'm okay with being the underdog. I've always been the underdog. I kind of thrive there. There isn't a better feeling than to accomplish something that everyone thought you couldn't. And it kind of is, it's motivating, to be quite honest. I have a I have a 15-year-old son, and I don't know any other way to teach him, about hard work and how much the sacrifices and perseverance and dedication pays off than to do exactly what I'm doing right now. And to take a fight like this and to show him, you give it your all, and hard work's going to pay off in the end.
Okay. Now, there has been MMA fighters that have found success in boxing, right? The
Mhm.
most recent is Francis Ngannou, faced who I believe was a Fury that overlooked him, but nonetheless, he looked good in that fight. You had, I thought he carried him, but nonetheless, Conor McGregor went 10 rounds against Mayweather. You have Clay Collard actually went through a good run, knocking out some prospects. So eventually, he lost a couple fights and he went back to MMA. But um, Chris Cyborg is obviously looking to make waves. She's mentioned she wants to become a world champion in boxing. Um, if obviously if you win this fight, it's going to open a lot of doors for you, because I think a lot of attention is going to come your way, right? Um,
Right.
where do you want to, assuming you win, where do you want to go after this? Like, what are you like? What level? Like, where are you wanting to go? Like, obviously, do you think you'll be ready for a title shot right away, or do you want to kind of have a couple fights? Like, where do you want to go from here if you win this fight?
So, for me, the goal and the dream is has always been to become a world champion. I think that's, everybody's, wants and intentions. Um, if the fight goes my way and I come out, victorious, um, you know, I would hope that a title shot would be something in my near future. Um, something I've noticed with women's boxing is that's different than men's is, women are getting title opportunities with minimal fights
Yes.
under their belt. And so I don't think it's outrageous for me to say that, that could be a potential in my near future. So of course that's the goal. So we'll see what happens for sure.
And the second follow up to that, back to the MMA fighters, like, do you feel? Because and earlier you mentioned, hey, this is a different sport. Do you
Mhm.
feel in a way like you're representing boxing in this fight?
I don't like to I don't like to make it seem like I'm, segregating boxing from MMA in that sense. Because regardless, she's a trailblazer in women's combat sports, you know, and so my whole mindset of this is just the striking's different, the footwork's different, the timing's different, your distance is different. There are just so many different factors between boxing and MMA that are different. And so if she's training, legitimately training to be a world champion in boxing, then, you know, hopefully those things are being worked on. But some of the fights I've seen where these MMA fighters jump right in the ring, I mean, it's a mess because
Mhm.
it's just not the same. So I'm anticipating her, you know, I'm anticipating it to be a fantastic fight. I would expect nothing less. I just hope that not only am I not being overlooked that much, but there's also being the respect to the sport of boxing that, hey, you got to put the time, the training, and the effort in the boxing world. You know, you can't just expect your MMA striking to make you a world champion in boxing because it won't.
Okay. Now we do have a question here from somebody in the chat. Um, TBH asking, have you studied footage on Cyborg?
Um, I've watched her pro debut boxing fight numerous times. That's the only footage I will study because, like I said, MMA striking's not the
Right.
same. I've watched Cyborg fight for years, you know. I'm sure everybody has, and she's a phenomenal athlete. But the boxing fight is my main focus. Watching, you know, her footwork, watching, you know, if she try to set things up, you know, how's her distance, how does she gauge, you know, does she come forward the whole time, does she cut good angles, you know, there's just different factors that are being watched, so the boxing fight's all I'm going to really pay attention to.
Okay. And do you think that's kind of like a blessing, the fact that she's had a boxing fight, so you actually have something to look at rather than this just being her debut and
Absolutely.
you're in the dark?
Absolutely, because I don't ever overlook anybody or anything. One thing my coaches told me from day one is anytime you get in that ring, you know, you need to act like you're fighting Mike Tyson. You know, you need to act like you're fighting the
Mm.
best in the world. You need to be prepared to bring your A game at all times. You know, don't ever go in there thinking that you got this in the bag and you let your guard down. You know, you are always fighting the best. And it just so happens, you know, this time as far as women's sports go, I am. So I'm not I'm not gonna cut anything short, you know.
For sure. We have another question from him. He says, what are some of the conditioning circuits she does in preparation for her fights?
So for me, I'm huge into swimming. Believe it or not, I think
Mm.
that running tears the body down. Um, I do think that you know, road work is good in a sense of keeping your weight. But boxing's a sprint in the sense of we only fight 2-minute rounds, unfortunately. So it's quick paced and it's a sprint. So I'll stick with, you know, sprint type workouts, sled pushes, assault bike, you know, high intensity training, and then I swim a lot for endurance.
Okay, there we go. Hey, that's a great workout right there. Um, so since you started, 'cause I know you said you didn't grow up watching boxing, but since
Mhm.
you discovered the sport and started actually participating in the sport, training in the sport, have you become a fan of the sport? Like, did you watch like all the stars and the champions? Do you keep like, are you subscribed to the Zone and the ESPN
Mhm.
Plus, and are you an
Yep, I
avid
have them
boxing
all.
fan?
I am because the sport itself is a beautiful thing. Um, you know, I wish I'd watched it more as a kid, you know, but it wasn't nobody in my family did. You know, nobody I knew at the time did. It was
Right.
all about, you know, what I was doing then. So now, yeah, watch a lot of boxing, study a lot of boxing. Um, you know, at every opportunity we're trying to learn. And I love the direction that you know women's boxing is going, and it's an honor to be fighting in this era where you know things are slowly but surely changing.
All right. So you're a diehard fan now, right? Like you follow sport through and through.
You know, I do my best. Yeah,
Okay.
I try to keep up. I have a few fighters that I prefer to watch more than others. But I do my best to keep on top of it.
So what's your favorite like give me some of your favorite fighters right now, male or female?
So I would have to say right now, one of my favorites for men is Lomachenko.
Okay.
It has been for years now because his footwork alone is a thing of beauty. I've tried to study that and watch that for a long time. And just his IQ is off the charts. So been a huge fan of him for a long time. And then as far as women go, I'm a huge fan of Amanda Serrano. I've been following her since I started boxing, because she's hands down one of the best. And she's, a champion in practically every division possible. And you don't get that without hard work. Um, I love watching Katie Taylor, because she's a beautiful boxer. Um, and then I would have to say I like Michaela Mayer for the fact that she's she's my goals for range. I like her distance
Okay.
and uh, how she controls the ring. So I have a few women that I prefer to obviously study and follow a little more, but there's so many out there now. There's so many amazing
There
female
is.
boxers. Yeah.
So speaking of Katie Taylor, she's going to fight this Saturday in a rematch against
Mm-hmm.
Chantel
Cameron.
Cameron in Ireland.
Yeah.
Do you think she's going to get her get back, or do you think Cameron might pull it off again?
That was a tough, tough fight the first time.
Yeah.
I think that I think that Katie Taylor needs to be a little bit more aggressive. I think that I don't think she necessarily got outworked, but I think that Cameron was just more aggressive. She threw first and landed last. It was just she carried the tempo a little bit more. So I think if Taylor's ready to let her hands go a little more and be a little more aggressive, she could pull it off.
Okay. Now, have you ever like had a dream of like becoming world champion? Have you dreamt about that and woken up? Like, did it feel real?
I have. And that's also something I have a coach. He was one of my MMA coaches back when I was an amateur, and he was a big believer in manifesting. Law of
Mm.
attraction. You visualize what you want to happen and make it so. Bring it to your reality. So I definitely would say I've had dreams of being a world champion. I dream of competing in boxing a lot. But it's more so while I'm actually awake. You try to really sit there and play things out in your head, manifest how you want things to go, visualize how you want things to go. And I'm a firm believer in bringing those things to you. So that's something that we work on a lot.
So you think those are visions, or do you think they're dreams?
I think that it's envisioning what you want. I think
Okay.
it's visualizing in your mind how you want that fight to go, how you want each round to go. So I think visions are things that happen with or without, you meaning for them to happen. But I would say I more envision what I want, to
Okay.
try to manifest that to myself.
All right. Now, one last question. If, let's say, 30 years from now, someone writes a book about Kelsey Wickstrom, and then when someone finishes reading that book, they close it. What, like, once you're finished reading that book, what are they going to say about you?
I hope that they would say that, I never gave up. I never quit, no matter what roadblocks were put in my way. I persevered through, and found a way you know, to live out my goals and my dreams. I would hope that I've been the role model that I've hoped for, that I've given not only my son, but the upcoming youth, uh, the hopes that, with hard work and determination that, they can do anything that they set their mind to. Um, I'm all heart. I always have been, and it's really hard to beat someone that's all heart. And so I would hope that I would just have left that pathway open, for everyone behind me, you know, to know that you got to go for it, no matter where you live, no matter what you have. You got to go for it if you want it, and if you want it bad enough, it'll come.
That sounds awesome. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Kelsey, giving us your
Thank
time,
you.
and hope to have you back in the future. And I wish you nothing but the best in January.
Thank you so much.
All right, you have a good one.
You too. Bye bye.
There you go, guys. Look, obviously, we know how this boxing game works. That they're gonna, like, I'm sure the Cyborg team feels confident about this, and this fight's intriguing because, like, we don't really know how good Cyborg's boxing is. So we just don't. She looked okay in her pro debut, but it's hard to judge. It's her pro debut. I mean, I don't even know what to make of it. Kelsey has 2 fights, so could only make so much of it. So that makes this fight very intriguing. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to watch it. From the fights I've seen from Kelsey, she's fun to watch. We know Cyborg brings it, so I know regardless of who wins, it's going to be a great fight. I want to thank everybody who tuned in and watched. Thanks to Brian for his questions. Pound for pound, Jack, how are you going? Um, and there we go. This is D Style Boxing. Keep it boxing. We're out of here. Peace.